Okay, welcome back to MrGrok.net on the YouTubes. Make sure you slam that dislike button once again. That joke's getting old. So the war of attrition is continuing and people continue to leave the room, which is okay. Sometimes they have to pee, sometimes they have to leave. Sometimes they have to complain about their dads, and that's okay too. And so, where we are now is we're going to do our last LEQ for the day. We're going to grade it and see how it turns out. Again, if this is the first LEQ that you've seen me grade, there's two more before this, and there's also me kind of going over this prompt and going over the rubric. So the LEQ looks like this. It is black text on a block paper. Okay. And it is develop an argument that evaluates changes in labor systems in one of the following regions within the time period of 1450 to 1900. See you later. We've got the options of Latin America and the Caribbean or North America. One thing that would be kind of cool for you to throw nuance or throw in for that extra point, I just noticed, in that last paragraph, if you're writing about this, in the last paragraph, you could throw one of those in. And that would be pretty impressive to the reader and talk about, another side. Okay, so the first thing we're going to look at here is for the context. And remember, we are, for context, we are setting the stage. We're going to tell a story, but we have to set all the props and set pieces out. So, in 1450, when the Europeans migrated to North America, North America. That is the less common one here. When the Europeans migrated to North America, they brought about many new ideas from their homeland. Disease, which killed a large number of the natives, and the idea of capitalism, or making money. From 1450 to 1900, the labor systems, so we have things that the Europeans are going to bring, and it looks like the setup that this student has for the context is that Europeans showing up is the story that this essay is going to be about. Okay, and I would say I would give this student the advice to give a little more she in the context, but this is definitely context, okay? This is good context, okay? And then this student, I think I was going to say this on the earlier one and got sidetracked. What else is new? This student makes a very clear transition into their thesis, which makes things really easy on the reader. So from 1450 to 1900, the labor systems to carry out those ideas have changed by the type of labor, the place of work, and has stayed the same by the place of women in the labor system. Okay, now that was kind of choppy and it wasn't beautiful, but it got the job done. And we are, as readers, on the actual AP exam, it's our job to kind of try to see what's there. And I can see that this student is saying that the type of labor changed, where the labor happened changed, and it stayed the same by women having the same place in the labor system. Okay? Although those systems have changed, they're still working to achieve the same goal. Make as much money as possible. This idea takes many workers and a lot of hard work. Wow, that's a bullcrap sentence. Okay. But God bless. All right, so that's a really strong opening paragraph. And I felt like the reason I had to make that little snide remark there is I felt like this was going into a really strong transition into this paragraph, but it never happened, but that's still okay. All right, so now, we'll start in the first paragraph. So they definitely have thesis. And so now we're in the first body paragraph. One important way that labor systems changed from 1450 to 1900 was the type of labor. In 1450, slavery was the main source of labor on plantations. No, my God. In 1450, there were no Europeans here yet. All right, so that doesn't mean it's the end of the world, but let's see where we're going. Slavery was the main source of labor on plantations. This practice was carried out until the 1800s when slavery was abolished in the United States. So now, if I disregard this, this is true. This is true. And if this student's going to make this a change, I can still give them credit for this. And this isn't me cheating for a student. This is me trying to do, it's the rewards-based model. Okay, so let's see if they can get this credit. Slavery was abolished in the 1800s. That's true. This caused a huge dip in plantations owners' profits, and as they had to begin to pay the workers for what they were doing on the farm. Eventually, there was less workers needed on the plantations and more needed in the factories and offices. Okay, so do you have a question? Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry about that. And so here, so this student made an error up here, but it was not a fatal error because this paragraph was not about slavery was something that started in 1450, right? The truth is, I think they said like the first slaves arrived in the United States in the 1600s, the early 1600s, okay? But still, it talks about how it continued, and then it changed. And the change, that definitely was a change in the labor system because these people went from slaves to paid laborers, okay? So I would say definitely that's good. Another change in labor systems between 1490 and 1900 was the place of the work. Plantations slowly turned into factories until there were few plantations left. The Industrial Revolution, which took place in the 1800s and 1900s, meant that food was no longer the main source of money in North America. That's cool. That's very good. This changed the area people were working in and the products they sold. Food was no longer the major source of many for the North American economy. You said the same thing twice there. And again, we know it's a rough draft, so no hate. This allowed men to get other jobs rather than working on a plantation. So I would say that paragraph is not as strong as the first body paragraph, but the move to factories is definitely a change in the labor system, and I think that's good. Okay, here's our third body paragraph. One thing that stayed the same in the North American labor system from 1450 to 1950 was the place of women in the workforce. Women were still viewed as socially lower than men, so they were to stay at home and answer to their husbands. Women did not get equal treatment in 1450 or 1900. Women were not given the right to vote until the 1920s. This shows that the first peak of equality for women was in 1920 when they were given the right to vote. So it's 1919 for the United States, but it's the 20th Amendment, so people get that mixed up a lot. And then the other thing is, but you are right, in the 20s, it's after World War I. Throughout this time period, women were the minority, and they were discriminated against throughout. Now, I would definitely say social minority, because if you just say minority, then the problem is it looks like there are less of them. There are many changes in the North American labor system, and then we just go into that. Okay. So, I know that I can give them one evidence point and one analysis point, no questions asked. That's easy. Okay? Supporting an argument in response to the prompt using specific and relevant examples of evidence, definitely. So, this student definitely has at least a 5 now. Okay? Let's see if we can get the 6. So they did do change and continuity, which is good. it's hard for me to pull other ones out here. And especially with the mistake on the slavery. And so I just want to be honest here because I don't want to lie to you guys. And the student who I'm grading this is right in front of me. But I guess what I'm saying is this is a very good paper. There were, I think, 2 of the 3 body paragraphs left me wanting more and more tap dancing, more sprinkles. And there really wasn't a time where I was wowed. And I know that's not these bullet points here, but they can really drive me through that bullet point. Did this show me that you have a complex understanding of labor systems? Well, when I look at it like that, I think there's more of an argument. I'm going to stick with a 1, and not because I hate you, but still a really good paper. I would give the same advice to sprinkle in she, to tap dance, and I would say use the last paragraph. And then, I mean, even more like on the thesis, like I kind of had to cobble together the thesis and just the way that it flowed. And that's going to keep me and a lot of other teachers that are grading this essay because, you know, we're supposed to grade it based only on these bullets. But the truth is, this bullet system used to be 2 different points that you could get on an AP essay. Basically, you could get 7 points, and then if you got all 7, you could get 2 more bonus points. And so I think a lot of teachers are still going to be in that vibe. But either way, that was a very awesome, great essay, and let's see if we have any questions from the peanut gallery. We have no questions. Someone has a question.
I have a question. Can I have a new sheet?
She has a question. It is, can she have a new sheet? Perhaps. We'll see. Sort of a question. Okay, so that was a really good question. If I'm describing a change, can I describe a change over the paragraph? My answer to that question is I don't know, but I wouldn't risk it. I would have 1 paragraph that describes one change, 1 paragraph that describes another change, and 1 paragraph that describes continuity, just to make sure. The more creative good writers get in AP, at least AP World History, the worse their scores get. And I think I probably told you guys before that I had a student that argued with me that they wanted to write this big, beautiful essay, and they ended up getting a 2 on AP. Okay? All right. So that looks like that's the end of that. Thank you guys again for stopping in. If this is the night before the AP exam, go ahead and go to sleep. If you stay up all night, you're probably going to do really bad. But this is the end of the video, so go to sleep after this video is over. Make sure you slam and smash that like button, dislike button, and ring that bell,